that there are budget cuts in schools. This forces the schools to prioritize their classes, usually using their funding for math classes, English classes, and science classes. But there are also important courses that are being cut. These courses are such as art classes. I claim that cutting the art classes will negatively affect the schools. One, because cutting these classes will decrease the academic performance of the students. Two, cutting the classes will potentially increase vandalism and violence on campus. And three, cutting art classes will further decrease the economy of the school. So you might be asking, why is it that cutting art classes will decrease the performance of students in the other classes? Well, in an article titled, "Will Less Art and Music in the Classroom Really Help Students Soar Academically?" the author Hawkins says that research has shown that art education helps improve standard test scores. The study that she talks about was done by the College Board. In this study, it shows that art increases critical thinking in students, and it also enhances creativity, and it helps as inspiration for the students. So if they have more critical thinking and if they can use their creativity, they can also be inspired, and they will be performing better in all the other classes. If they perform better in the other classes, they will also perform better in their tests and make the school look better. Getting rid of art classes will also potentially increase vandalism and violence on campus. In a news report done this year, in March, titled "Principal Fires Security Guards to Hire Art Teachers and Transform Elementary School," the viewers were able to see a story about a school who was known for violence. It was up to the point where the students were not allowed to take backpacks to school anymore, just to make sure that they weren't carrying weapons. And this was an elementary school. So it was pretty severe. It was so bad that within 7 years, there had been 5 different principals. And it wasn't until the 6th one who decided to change things up. He got rid of the security and used that money to install an art program at the school. After that, he realized that the students were expressing themselves more freely. And as research shows, the same College Board study, that when students are allowed to express themselves freely, their self-esteem can rise, it can go up, and also they can relate to other people better. So with this going on, there's less probability of fights or violence in school. And third, cutting the funds for art programs will further decrease the school's economy. Schools that have the art program usually get private funders. They get funding for their art programs. However, if the school does not have enough money to stay with the art program, they will most likely not have students be in the classes. They will not have the materials to let these students create art, and they will lose the funders that they have. In an article, "Public School / Art Education and Turn to Private Funding," it states that some schools actually prioritize in art. They use their funding for art just to get those funders to keep donating their money to their school. So as you can see, getting rid of the art classes in schools can actually do the opposite effect of what people think that it can do.
All right, Blanca, the structure is all fine. It's easy to tell where you're headed. You do a good job previewing the supporting structure. You give us a little bit of a background to try and justify why this is an argument. It would be helpful if we had some information rather than just kind of your general reference to tough times and programs being cut. That suggested the arts programs, for instance, are the first cut, that they're the ones that are being cut the most at this particular point. Anything like that shouldn't be that hard to find, so it does feel a little bit thin, but I think most people understand the position that you're taking. Although I've been hearing the same kind of argument for years and years and years. When is it that Mr. Holland's Opus came out in 1995? You know, that's 20 years ago that we've been hearing these arguments about funding the arts. So, I don't think anybody thinks that the arts are superfluous, but the question that you're talking about is, are they essential for the working of the school? And that's kind of the way that you're designing this. Your first point, I think, is an interesting idea. You've got information here about how it's supposed to benefit people's critical thinking and improve their learning. And there is information on this, but the information that you present is very generic, very broad-based. It says that art helps people with their critical thinking skills, and then you equate critical thinking skills with doing well in school, and I'm not exactly sure that that is a complementary relationship. It should be, but we don't have any data to suggest that that is the case, or any reason to believe that schools that have art have better critical thinking in any measurable way, except that we just think that that's kind of the case. And so it's sort of an esoteric conclusion. It sounds like the College Board is citing some study, but there isn't any hard information cited from the study. At best, we're getting the general conclusions from that study, and there wasn't any, like I said, statistical data to go along with it. Your second point is dependent on an example, and it's an interesting example. What I don't get is if there's any, again, measurable outcome. I know what the principal did. Did it result in the schools being safer, less vandalism, less violence, all those sorts of things? You didn't really follow through with that kind of information. And again, this is a singular example, so the notion that art programs are going to replace the need for security guards, I think, is maybe at an elementary school that's the case. I don't know. In this particular school, it might be the case, although we needed the follow-up information. But it seems awfully hard for me to believe that some of these schools that are having all kinds of problems there, that the answer to whether or not people are carrying guns on campus is to give them a paintbrush or to allow them to be in the band. I mean, those things probably wouldn't hurt, but I'm not exactly sure that they're going to eliminate the problem. And that's kind of pie in the sky information here. And if you're going to make the argument, you need to make it a little bit stronger. Like I said, I think you've got an interesting example here, but there's not enough follow-up on that example, and we could use some other information to support that as well. And then on your third point, it was a little unclear. I guess the idea here is that there's something about art that draws in more money to the schools, that people who are patrons of the arts will be patrons of the school, that they will donate money. That might be the case in some institutions. I'm not sure that any institutions get money as, like public schools, for instance. I'm not sure that they pull in any money for their arts programs. Maybe they do. The band, for instance, if you've got an orchestra or a drama program, I know that they do fundraising kinds of things, and maybe that's what you're talking about, that families participate in the fundraising, the community supports those kinds of things, and that brings money in. So the idea is, if you're putting on a play and you get 300 people from the community to pay for a ticket for the play, well, that's bringing money into the school. Is it enough to pay for all the stuff that put the play on in the first place? I don't know. And that's a little esoteric. It sounds very general in what you're talking about, and you're saying that there's a trade-off here, but you need to give us some quantification of that trade-off. So it just feels a little bit thin. Like I said, I think it's well organized. You kind of explained the concepts pretty well. You do an okay job delivering it to us. The evidence, I think, is where the problem is for the most part. All right, thank you.